Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sustainability Track here on African Renaissance TV with me, Mohamed Dibaji. Today's topic of discussion is one that really fascinates me, one that really makes me a proud African and most importantly a Gambian. Our topic of discussion today is the Independence Day celebration of the Gambia. This is a day that is celebrated every 18th February of every year in the Gambia, and to commemorate this, all Gambians come together, different stakeholders, institutions, and then lovers of the Gambia come together to celebrate this day as a special day for the Gambia, where we hail our heroes and then the history of our country, as well as talk about things that really matter to us as a country, and then thereafter look into the African continent as a whole. To form a discussion around this topic today, I have a very important guest to help me have a conversation around this topic. And before we get further on the discussions, I'll first allow him to introduce himself, and thereafter we have a conversation.
Thank you so much. It's not going to be a very long introduction. Just briefly, I am Sanaba Jaula, work as a project officer for Society for the Study of Women's Health, and before that I worked for Bekanyang as senior program officer. And during my student life, I have worked or served in different capacities. And when I was at the university, I served the social sciences as Secretary General and the union itself in the parliament as the speaker of the UTG SULB. So briefly, this is me.
Also, indeed, that makes you an honorable. Once a speaker is always a speaker, and then speakers would always go with the honorable title, which is important. But coming to our topic of discussion here today, the Independence Day celebration in the Gambia. 18 February, this has been a landmark date in this country as we talk about different things as far as the country is concerned. But before we in fact head onto this conversation, I want to ask this quick question. Why must we celebrate the Independence Day as a country?
First of all, this day marks a very important day for every Gambian. It was 7 months before this day that DK, that is Dauda Karaba Jawara, led a team to the UK to seek for independence. Reason why we must celebrate this day is because it is a day that has meant our sovereignty first. It is also a day that meant a lot of Gambians been extended the franchise to be able to vote and also voted for. So this day, it is also for us to say that we want to be a nation that is going to govern itself. And all of that chain where we were under colonialism, all of it came to the end on this day. So that is why it is also important that every one of us celebrate this day, because it shows that we are not colonized again. But it is also showing that the Gambia, it is not as it used to be. Before the 18th of February, we understand that even in Parliament, it was not an opportunity for everyone in this country. It was only a few. And even before that, we also know voting, for instance, franchise was very much limited. And for people that were in the rural Gambia would think that, okay, they are not even part of the Gambia. But today that is not the case. So that is why after our flag was hired up, it became a pride moment for all of us to say that we are a state, we are a nation that can govern itself. And all of that makes this day a very important day for everyone to celebrate and say that I am a proud Gambian.
So that is indeed important. This is a day that is worth celebrating by every Gambian and then lovers of the Gambia. But before I head into the next question, I want to ask this quick question here. In your life as a student, this is normally a special day for students where we have students of all categories combined together to celebrate this day. But what is your most fun moment as far as your memory can serve you on Independence Day?
For me, it would be not when I was very much young, but when I was going to Amite Senior Secondary School, when we converge at the field, celebrating this day. But also, it is not going to be one that I could be very much proud of at some point, because there then it has also reminded me of how our people used to live, because it has also taught us lessons of how we used to live under colonialism. So, but what was fascinating about that day was when I saw the governor out, as it happens in the Greater Banjul area, when the president comes out as going around with students, either shaking hand or waving them. So for me, the vehicle that I saw him driving that day was like when I returned home, I said to my people that I've seen the president, not knowing that
That was the governor.
that was just the governor, because I was looking forward to see the president as he does with those students in the Greater Banjul area. But again, it was a time when I was also called to read the national anthem, for instance, where a lot of students were also present, and my parents were also there. And at some point, I thought this wasn't possible. When I did it, and my mom came to shake my hand, I was like, well,
That was a special feeling.
yeah. So for seeing that person celebrating me on that day in the midst of, let's say, thousands of people, makes this day a very special
Memorable
day
one
for
for
me,
you.
because anytime it approaches, it reminds me of that time that, oh, you were able to do this and your mom was able to celebrate with you together with the rest of my family. So that is why 18 February, when it approaches always, I give it all my time and say I'm going all out to celebrate this day.
I asked this because a lot of students, like you said, this is one of those days that they have that chance to see high dignitaries, presidents, ministers, and of all categories, and then that direct contact is usually once in a lifetime, as far as, especially for some people. So that is important. But moving on, as a country, the Gambia, looking at the Independence Day, 18th February. What if we were to go over, let's say, through some memory lanes and then see what are some of the things that we have done right as a country since independence?
Um, let me say what I am very much passionate about, and then I would be able to give you an answer to this. As a person, a youth advocate, for instance, I am very much passionate about politics, uh, especially when it relates to youth and
Youth.
women participation and representation. Where we've made strides, success, is, for instance, this country. When you are 18, you have a franchise. And when you're 21, you have a right to contest a lot of positions in this country. And that was not the case before independence.
Okay.
But also having to say, to say that this is how we want to be governed through the National Assembly was not the case as well. And that was why for people like Edward Francis Small, they went all out to fight, to say that our people must be given the voice, our people must be represented. But also, even if you're taken from them, it cannot just be taken from them all the time. But then these people must also be part of the center table and be able to discuss for themselves. And that is exactly what we have today. And there can be a lot of contrary opinions to this, that there are challenges, there are failures, but the successes are also huge. For instance, for now, let's say we look at what has been happening before. Until in 1990 or 1999, the Gambia never had a university. And that is what all of us are
Went
opportune to
through,
go
sure.
to. So you look at all of that. For now, the Gambia is not only looking at basic education, be it free or accessible for a lot of Gambians, but it has made a special commitment that it is going to be compulsory. And this means that the government has to do everything it takes within its powers to make it accessible for even those in the rural Gambia. So this is a success. But not just only that, we are able to say that this is the president we want, this is the National Assembly we want, and this is the council we want through an election. And this thing is conducted by Gambians. It is Gambians that participate in the whole process by voting. So all of these things are what we have done good. Before, these things were things that we would have wished that they happened, but they were not there. And even if they were there, they were at a minimal level. But now we can see it at maximum level. And that education we are also talking about, there are failures, but the successes are huge. Even before the 1994, there were very few schools. But now we're talking about thousands of
Thousands of
schools.
schools.
And these schools are not just schools that are built anywhere, but they are made accessible to a very good extent. They are made affordable for the most poor, the poorest person in my village. So these are successes. But also not just that, our health sector, even though we will talk about the challenges, but you go around the country that it used to be the RVTH before, the Bansang, the Farafenni, but now you have a lot of
Yeah,
hospitals.
all over the country.
They remain our referral hospitals, but you have other hospitals that you can easily go to, and you have a lot of health centers that are also built around. So these are successes that we can say that even after our independence, we're able to do that. But there are challenges. So not just the health sector, and some would argue that the agriculture used to do better compared to now. But the agriculture we used to have before the independence
Yeah.
and the agriculture we had just after the independence were also completely different. Along the line, we failed somewhere. But that agriculture just after the independence under Jawara, we are told that was also very good. So we were able to have do all of these things successfully, even though I must admit that there, along the way, there are challenges that we will have to overcome. But all in all, I think these are major successes that we can be proud to say that we have done this well and we are celebrating it.
Indeed, that is important. I mean, like you said, even just looking at the franchise, the right to vote and be voted for as Gambians, by Gambians in our country, alone is what celebrating, is what noting as success story. So if we have to name some of these, what are some of those challenges that we are facing now, I mean, since the attainment of independence, that we should really look into as a country?
I would say is this country's lack of respect for women is one failure. At 58, you have a majority of our population being women. They are represented in no decision-making body with more than 23%. With more than 23%.
That is huge.
So you can see for a country that has more than 50-something to 60-something% as your population, they are underrepresented in all decision-making processes. That is quite a failure. And the society is not helping. But also when you look at the youth, we graduate a lot of people. The university every year will graduate thousands of people, students. And these are people that go to the streets without jobs. Because the country all along has only been doing the usual thing, that is students memorizing, and they're not being provided with the skills, the requisite skills in the job market. So and as such, even when they graduate, they find it difficult to make it in the market. And those students, that youthful population, even though we can be proud of, and it is that youthful population that can also help us get food security, for instance, when they are engaged in agriculture. But we cannot have this youthful population engaged in agriculture when they are not provided the support that is needed. They are not provided the materials. Even the access to finance is not provided for them. So that is also another failure for us. So, but all of that, it is disheartening to know that at 58, there are communities that will walk more than 5 kilometers every day to go, not even in the Gambia, but into Senegal and get water. Water not for their animals, but water for them to drink. At 58, that the country cannot have a clean drinking water for its people. There are a lot of communities, especially those in the rural communities, that do not have access to basic services. They do not know what a hospital means. They do not know what a school means for them. They do not know what electricity means for them because they don't see it. So anytime they are exposed to those things, they don't even think that they are living in the Gambia. And we're talking about 58 years of independence. But also, like we have said, when Jawara was and his people were asking for independence, one author would say that this country cannot make it itself.
Sure.
And he has given name to this country. He has described it that this country is not able to fend for itself, cannot fend for itself. You get it? But at 58, basic services should be accessible for everybody. And that is not the case. So we have failed in all of those things.
In that aspect.
But not just that. The education that we're talking about, even though government has made it compulsory and made that strong commitment to say that they're going to make it accessible, affordable for every Gambian. You go to certain communities, the students sit on the floor to take their lessons. You go to a hospital wherein you're not provided anything to support yourself. And these are things that the government has made a lot of commitments to. But even in our agriculture, we're failing drastically. We're told that during Jawara's time, and not just during Jawara's
Yeah,
time.
even early part of Jambe's
Yes,
yeah.
Jammeh's time. So we know that we have a land that is able to feed the Gambian population and also have it exported into the world. And only the Jahal Pachal, which Sierra is called the food basket of this country, we feel that it is underutilized. Every one of us will agree that that area is underutilized because what should have been produced there every year
It's
is
really
not.
not. It's not.
Because the government is not making a lot of investment into it. I had an opportunity to look at, I think, the 1975, 78 or 76, 78 budget. And I looked at it, the office of the president was allocated with 0.0 something percent in the national budget. And the agriculture and other ministries, which were very key, agriculture, education, were allocated with almost 9 to 15% of the total budget. But that is not the case for us now.
Now
Agriculture
we've
is
taken
now
a shift
allocated
in the
about
reverse way.
1% of our budget every year. And this is a country that is solely dependent on agriculture because a lot of our people are substance farmers. So these are failures that we after independence, 58 years, that we still continue to face. And there is a lot more that needs to be done. Our governance structure, sometimes you can argue that it is good, but there are shortcomings as well. There are huge shortcomings. We have our three arms of government, but that also serving the purpose? Whereas we see executive decisions where that should have been made by the National Assembly, and nobody is doing the checks and balances. And we see individuals making fun of our national resources. We're seeing endemic corruption, and nobody is held responsible for those things. So these are failures, and we are not able to put in policies, structures
can stop
that will
those.
ensure that we shift from that to a better Gambia.
Indeed, though, like we said, we can, if we are to discuss on even these challenges alone, can be an episode of its own. But then these are what I'm recognizing, and then so that we can understand as a country that things that we are not doing right. It is in as much as it's important to celebrate things that we've had success stories in. This other side of it is also important to look at. There's one thing that you talked about, especially when it comes to education, and then the challenge that the youth and then women face, for instance. These are things that really were some catalysts for the fight for independence at the time, in the, before independence, in the colonial era. And when you look at the Jordan Karaba Jawaras and then the Edward Francis Small, these were people and many other heroes that really fought for our independence. These were some of the things that motivated them to fight for the Gambia that they wanted for us. And then looking at 58 years after that today, some of these things are sadly things that we wouldn't have hoped to be talking about today. But because they are still happening, we must continue to have a conversation around them in order to put an end to it. Looking at the issue of youth, for instance, when you consider youth and then we talk about the illegal migration, for instance, it's one of the things that is really causing like a burden to this generation. And then women, for instance, having that underrepresentation as far as participation is concerned in key development areas of this country. So these are some of the things that we really need a shift. And then to have a shift in this, we just not this would we understand it will not come within a day or two. And then, but it's important we have policies and then we have stakeholders support some of these things for us to be able to move ahead with that. That brings me to this next question. When you look at the youth and the women, how important is their role for the next phase of this country? I mean, if the Gambia we really want, from now on, after 58 years, now we are trying to look at a different Gambia coming for the years to come. But what roles do youth and women really hold as far as that is concerned for us to make progress that we desire now?
Thank you so much. Generally, let's take it from continental level first. Africa is projected to be very strong economically in time to come very soon. And the reason for this that a lot of people are talking about is the
The
youthful
youth
population of
population of the continent.
Africa. So the Gambia too is not an exception. We have a youthful population. Even for people that are 18 to 35, we have more than 37%. And for people that are 1 to 35, we're talking about 6 something percent. So that population, we cannot attain any development if we forget to take these people on board. And taking them on board would not mean that somebody sits somewhere and decide for what happens to them. It is for them to be architects of their own destiny. It is for them to sit and decide how they want their future to look like. And for women as well, let's, for instance, say in all the small business enterprise, it is the women that are driving it. You go into the local market, it is women that you find there. You go into horticulture, vegetable gardening, and so it is women that are also doing all of that. Even in agriculture now, groundnut farming and all of things, it is also women that are doing that. So if you are very serious as a country, if we are serious as a country, these people cannot be left out. And when we say they cannot be left out, it is not for you to bring them on board when it is a finished product. It is for them to be engaged
They
from
need to
the
be
get-go,
part of this
so
process.
that they decide for themselves what is going to happen to them and what is going to happen to their future. They decide. So that to happen, for instance, we must ensure that they take the center stage, be part of the decision-making processes. And let's say, for instance, at cabinet level, for instance, we have 0% youth representation. At parliament, we don't have more than 17%. And this is the case for both men and women. At cabinet level, women, it's better because you have 3, 4 women who are in cabinet. But you look at parliament and even in local government councils, it is the same. And you look at, let's say, at regional level, the leadership also, they are all men. They are all old. They are not youth, they are women. They are not women. The only person or two I remember, one would be in Sierra and the other one will be Farah to Alcalo. These are the local authorities I know to be women. The rest, I don't. And these are people that are also, they are not even elected. When you say, but you have to go and contest and be elected for the position, that is fine.
Yes.
It is for people to choose. But these are people that are nominated, these are people that are appointed by an authority. And if that authority is serious about the welfare, would have put it into consideration and say, you know what, the next governor in LRA must be a youth. The next governor in Sierra must be a woman. And then you're able to ensure that there is that balance. So if we want to move forward, these are very important critical stakeholders that they must come on. Agriculture that we're talking about, it is not for every one of us to go to the farm. In the US, you don't have more than 10% of their population engaged in agriculture. Very few that is engaged in agriculture, but they're able to feed and they're able to export. So here too, that youthful population, that energy, if it is provided the requisite support, they go into the field and they're able to do that. But the women there in the markets, they're not even provided the stalls. When they go into the market, they sell their produce, they don't finish it, they don't have a place to keep them. And we want to say that we're going to have attain development. It's not possible because these two critical stakeholders that are even drivers of our economy are not given the necessary support, are not given the necessary consideration when it comes to our development. So Africa, the Gambia would only develop, I think, when these critical stakeholders are on board and they're given the rightful position so that they're able to decide for themselves what their future holds.
Indeed, that is important because looking at now is like the whole world. One of the one of the household names as far as the world is concerned is sustainability, and for the Gambia particularly, and then Africa at a general level, to attain sustainable development in every aspect of our lives, it's important to not just carry along the youth and the women. It's to involve every member of society, but most importantly the youth and the women. That is indeed important, because without that, it's going to be difficult to have a shift from what has been happening. It's like we are doing over things that had already happened, things that really prompted the need to fight for independence in the first place. That is important. So that makes me want to shift into the policy aspect here. What Looking at the post-independence as a country, the Gambia specifically, what are some of those policies that we can cite to say that these are policies that have been good enough for our development, that we can start from? It's like they can serve as a starting point for the next phase of our development. Because the Gambia has seen 3 eras of, as far as governance is concerned, since independence. And then I'm sure we have lots of policies, but then I want us to pick at least few to say, okay, what are some of these few policies that are really worth knowing as far as development is concerned in this country?
Thank you. For every country to succeed, we know education is primary. It is only through education that you can
A
make
lot
it,
of this can be achieved.
can be achieved. So one thing that the government, the Gambia has committed itself is primary education being mandatory. And it is only through this that we're going to make way. But now also, I can see a shift, knowing that that education even we have is not giving us the fruits we desire. And we begin to see a shift that we're now moving from memorization to competency based. And I can see the ministry introducing that. So that policy to say that, well, every child until you're at grade 12, you must have basic education. And we're also seeing schools getting accessible to the Gambian people. So this is, for me, this is the
That is a
basis that
step in
we
the
should
right
start.
direction.
This is the basics that we should start. That once you're born, regardless of where you're born, you get that basis and be able to say that this is what I want to become. Before we talk about which university you go to, the foundation must be there. And this compulsory basic education is the foundation for our development. So that is one thing that we're getting it right. And now that we know that, okay, there are schools that are being built, making it very accessible to people. Before, you used to have only one senior secondary school in Sierra, which used to be Amity. We now have a lot of senior secondary schools in Sierra. You have the Bansang, you have the Nyani, Karantaba, and the other places. Now education is becoming accessible for them. So moving on, knowing that this thing is not giving us the fruit we desire, that a lot of people will graduate and they cannot make it in the job market.
In the work market.
Now we are changing from the memorization to a competency base, and skill is becoming central in this. That you don't just acquire the knowledge, but then you're also provided the skills. So that once you finish, you become your own boss, your own employer, that you're able to serve your community,
Yeah.
and not just wait for anybody to call you on board and say, I have a vacancy for you to apply. So that is one. But even our health, even though there are challenges, unlike many other places in this world, you go to consultancy even is paid. Our public hospitals, you don't pay for consultancy even. They're made free. All you need is a ticket. But we can also understand that, okay, compared to other parts of the world, where livelihoods are provided for a lot of young people, especially for those. But also there are supports, welfare supports, for instance, that if you're very much poor, the state is able to provide some services for you, just to ensure that you also live a very good life. So there too, we can see that, okay, now hospitals are also getting accessible. The ministry is also looking at it that, okay, not just having one referral hospital, but why not we have other hospitals, other health centers, just to ensure that if there is any emergency, we're able to respond to it. And that is why, even though there are challenges, the Ebola outbreak, the way it hit the Gambia, the COVID-19 did not do that much damage to us, because we're able to prepare ourselves, we have learned our lessons from it, and we move on. And even in our agriculture, you can still argue, but there are a lot of arable lands for us, and people are also conserving those lands. that for lands that are identified to be protected lands, at some point we're losing some of them, but a majority also stays with us. And some people now, that a lot of people are also conscious that even at some point government wants to degazette some of those things and use them for other purposes. People will come and say that, no, this is an important piece of a resource for us
That we
that you must not touch. So those lands that were gazetted, for instance, to say that they are protected lands is a good policy, because until today we continue to have some tourists in this country, purposely because those are places that they want to go,
that has an
because
economic
they
bearing on
are a
us.
habitat for some species in there. You go to the monkey park, which is under threat for now, but having to protect that area is bringing a lot of tourists into this country. So you go to other areas as well, and those are policy decisions that this area cannot be. You cannot cut trees in this area. Those are very good policy decisions that we have made, and they are a basis that we can build on to become a better country. And even in governance, at least we're able to have a separation of powers.
Sure, yeah.
And that separation of powers, you can say that even just recently, the court made a judgment that, okay, you cannot have that interference in the local government. The Talib and the 52 others against the state. We've also seen the issues of that, even in governance, that there are policies, our laws are very good, such that when we build on those ones, we're going to have a democracy that all of us can be proud of. So these are policy things that they are a basis that when we build on them, we should be able to get the country that we want.
Yes, so those are some of the important things that we have here. As far as policies are concerned, we recognize the fact that there exist very good policies, even in the midst of challenges that we face as a nation. And one of the things that this country is known for, it's outside of the Gambia, outside of Africa. In fact, it's called the Smiling Coast of Africa. That for a good reason. One of the things that most people will argue, we are known as the smiling coast of of Africa for the peace and tranquility we have in this country, that has always been in this country. How relevant is peace in this country as far as our development is concerned?
Peace is central in development, and that is why for some developmentalists, they take it to mean development, and for others too, they take happiness to mean development, and just as other people will take it to mean economic growth, for instance. So peace to some people also, it's development in itself. So that is why it is very much important, because whatever happens, it has to happen in peace. So, but it is also important that we looked at why we are called the smiling coast, and whether or not we're losing our smiling.
Sure.
Or what we've been known for as a country that is very much peaceful. And we've also learned from history that Jawara used to be a very peaceful guy. And at some point, he has been involved in a lot of negotiations just to ensure that there is peace within Gambia and even outside the Gambia, within the continent and even the world in general. Because we think that all of us are interconnected, all of us are related in one way or the other. And this is why we're peaceful. Every community you go to, every compound you go to, you have all our ethnic groups living peacefully together. So what it means for a country in terms of development is that it is central. There is nothing we can achieve without peace. And that is why it is also important that those that are charged with that peace are able to effectively execute their duties. That is, the police, for instance, which are responsible for our internal peace, security of people and properties, that they ensure that peace is preserved at all times, and all other security apparatus to ensure that what we are known for, we don't lose it. But also along the point, it is also my considered view that it is important that the Gambia comes up with policies, be it law, for instance, because in 2021, just before the presidential elections, a research that was conducted, I've also shown that there is an increase in hate speech in the Gambia. So
which can always be a catalyst
for
for
violence.
violence.
So that alone tells you that, okay, there are a lot of vices that if care is not given can turn violent. That there are a lot of issues that are on the ground that if somebody is not taking the leadership, they can turn violence. And this is why for us as civil society and a lot of other people, institutions, will go all out and promote
The
peaceful
word of peace.
existence. But honestly speaking, I think it is time that either it is legislated or the president comes out and make a pronouncement as to a policy that his government is going to make just to ensure that those things are banned. And hearings, when we say a policy or it is a law that is going to be legislated, it is not for you to protect an individual, just a few. It has happened, for instance, at some point that, okay, there was a bill sort of that the government had wanted to introduce that was going to save ministers and the president for their parents to be insulted by anyone, because those things are considered to be hate speeches and so. But now we're saying that do it generally, that nobody comes out and say, for instance, I am a Mandinka, so I am going to insult, I go all out and insult an entire
Ethnic
ethnic group.
group.
And we have seen it happen. And there then we're building some sort of a non-violent thing in people that if care is not given can turn fatal. And that is going to turn everything upside down. That the smiling coast we are known for will easily lose it.
Indeed, the smiling coast of Africa. We are known for that for a reason, and then peace is one huge component as far as that is concerned. And then I ask this question because if you go over go in history to see one of the reasons why our heroes fought for independence as far as back as the 1960s were concerned. Is that they also believed and understood that, okay, at the time, coming together as one people, as who shared a common belief that this is the country that belongs to us, and then for us to attain and then own our country back, we need to come together and then in harmony to be able to realize that. And then they were able to do these things, okay? And then that unity really played a good part as far as that is concerned for us to come as winners and then be able to have our country back through independence. So that is important. And then, but to maintain this peace for the peaceful nature that we want, and then for the smiling coast that we are known for, like you said, there must be policies. This understanding alone that we are one and then we should be one is not enough. We should be able to have laws that are backing some of these things, and then so that all the government apparatus, institutions, and all stakeholders, and including people, should be able to understand and then hold the peace that we so dear, hold dear to us, and then that is important. So the next question I want to ask is this: if one is to suggest, what would be those policies that we should put in place for the maintenance of peace and order in this country?
Um, let me also quickly say that for some people, we are not at peace. Those are people who think that, okay, if I can wake up in the morning, go all out to fend for my family, and come at the end of the day without anything for my family, that means we're not at peace. And it is the same people who also think that when you go to bed hungry, wake up from bed hungry, and go to sleep again hungry. And that is happening in this country. So you can see, even if you do not read from a literature, that in the streets, for instance, you talk to a person politely, and the response you get is sometimes horrible. And there then you say to yourself that this guy is depressed. This guy has problems. Because for some people also here, it would mean that peace is a human right thing, that you must not be subjected to any inhuman treatment. For instances where people are being tortured, instances where people are not given the freedom to move about, and also instances where people are not even given the freedom to associate themselves to anything that they want. And let's say for an instance also, as it relates to human rights issues, instances where people are not able to observe their religious rights, for instance, they will say that those things are, we are not living in a peaceful country. And for me, the policy that we must also say, and even for our media, for instance, they will say that this country is not peaceful to some extent because a person could be charged for defamation. Sedition we still have in our laws, that somebody can write something about a public officer, and even if it is not intended to cause any damage to you, but because the story wasn't true, and you can be charged for that. So for me, where we need to begin these things, just to ensure that we have a peaceful country, that policy will start from the police.
Okay.
They are charged primarily to protect life and properties internally. That is what they are charged to do when you look at our constitution. And there's a state, there's a state institution. It is not the civil society, it is a state institution. So it is for them, for the policy to begin with the police, to ensure that they know that the people that they're serving are human beings. That policy would have to be there. For instance, we have in our Public Order Act access, freedom of movement, freedom of association, protest. These are basic human rights issues that if we want to move as a country, we must also give. Now that what happens when you deny all of those things is that when people want to protest, they don't. There are people who would only want to protest to be heard. And when they are heard, whatever is in them, it's done.
Yes.
But if you restrict them so much, what happens at some point is for them to say that we're not going to do this again. We're not going to seek for a permit again. We're going all out.
Yeah,
And
people
for
can
any
only take
democratic
it
state,
to an extent.
very well. For any democratic state, what is expected of the police is when a person or a group of people want to protest, it is for the police to provide them the security to ensure that the protesters do not stop somebody who wants to go on his or her business. The protesters do not obstruct anybody in traffic. For the protesters not to burn my house down. It is for the police to ensure that they are provided the security to go on with their protests peacefully without having to cause any harm to the society. So we have to begin with that. So for me, the Public Order Act should go if we want to maintain peace in this country. Because we have seen, even from when Jammeh left to date, a lot of peaceful protests that turned violent was as a result of this. And for instances where people refused at some point to take permit because they knew that, okay,
It would have
it was
been
not going to,
rejected.
yes, outright. So they thought it is not useful again. But also we have in our laws that it is sad that even after Jammeh is gone, for people that campaign on those reform policies, that we still have sedition in our law books. We have defamation in our law books. And even access to information was only passed in 2021, if I'm correct. So all of those things are things that we could have long worked on them. But now that we have the Access to Information Act bill, which is now what happens next is for us to ensure that the sedition, defamation, and other bad laws, draconian media laws, are also taken off. But also what we need to do is, as a country, we have an anti-corruption act already. But it is not serving the purpose.
It's not.
So already the bill that is before Parliament, they should also ensure that that anti-corruption bill becomes a law. Because what is happening at some point is that if everybody thinks that what belongs to the state belongs to nobody, people are going to take it, and taking that resource out, when people clash, it is going to be violent. So that anti-corruption bill is also a policy that will ensure that this country remains peaceful. Because if we are having natural resources in our communities, and we see that, okay, what we should get in return is not being provided because somebody somewhere is taking the money into his personal pocket, and nothing is being done about it. People can go out and claim that this is what it is. But if there is a commission that is to ensure that people that are involved in those corrupt practices are being accountable for those things, are being punished for those things, we are making sure that there is a peaceful society. So all of these bad laws should just go off and ensure that we bring in very good laws that are progressive, that are futuristic, and in vision, just to ensure that we remain as a peaceful country.
Indeed, because policies are like the cornerstones for everything that we do as a country. In fact, because that is one of the reasons why we have governments. We understand that if things are left to everyone to do anything, nothing will really work out. That is why we entrust people, and they are known as the government now, to put in those policies to represent our voices and then our needs. So those are important, and then I'm sure every stakeholder would agree that these policies are only going to do good for the Gambia. And that is important. Okay, and we are actually running out of time, but then I still want to ask this question. Would you agree to the fact that there is a need for reawakening of the Gambian politics? Because until I believe until we get our politics right, we cannot get our development right. Would this be a thing that you agree to look into our politics as a country, to say, okay, as far as politics is concerned, do we really need a shift into what is currently happening, or this is something that we can really maintain at this pace?
Yeah, for the politics, I'm not too sure. There is a lot of problems with our politics. The laws are good. Now that some other thing that we are also advocating at the civil society level, let's say for the party financing that we're also talking about, those things are advocacy issues that we are working on. But I don't think our politics is any too bad. It's good, but I would quickly say here that for me, I think our politics is on and running, so we don't need to awaken it again. What we need to do is to inject integrity,
Into the system.
sincerity, and accountability into our politics. But why I'm saying that we also have to inject sincerity and integrity into our politics, it is not for a politician to go to a podium and say that I am going to build you a bridge over Banjul Bara when you know that it is impossible.
Yeah, like most people,
Because
someone in fact say, in fact, a politician can simply promise to build a bridge for you at a place where there is no river, or in fact, there's no need for it.
and that is why also the same people will say when you are campaigning, you can say anything.
Anything.
Because they know that people have not injected sincerity and integrity into it. They don't question you on your policies. They don't hold you accountable on your policies. So for you, the person that is also talking to them, you're not being sincere to them, to know that there is no river here, so there is no need for me to build a bridge. So you know that there is no river, but you're still telling them that I am building a bridge here. So you are not sincere to them. So for me, these are things that we need to inject in our politics. But again, I would also have to say, what we need to do now, we are not talking about elite politics, wherein it is the most educated that are going to decide our politics. They design it and play it the way they want. But we're talking about a politics wherein those that have the knowledge would come out and ensure that these three things I talked about, integrity, sincerity, and accountability, are injected in our politics.
Indeed, we will get it right, and I'm still hopeful as a country we will get it right in the near future. When we track back again to the early independence times, in fact, before independence, one of the things that really aided facilitated the process of the attainment of independence at the time were the presence of media outlets at the time, like in the form of newspapers, and then different writers, prominent ones. In today's world, in today's Gambia, I mean, we don't just have those newspaper institutions or media outlets here, but we also have, in addition, to me, CSOs and NGOs in this country. And then I would want to believe they hold an equal or even more importance, like in the previous eras, to the development of this country. And yourself, coming from a CSO, how relevant are CSOs as far as the development of the Gambia is concerned?
Yeah, for let's say media is in the CSOs, and media in a democracy it's considered to be the fourth arm of governance, after the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Media, which is in the CSO. So for me, in general, CSOs will be the fourth arm of government. And let me quickly say that even after, before and after our independence until recently, CSOs, NGOs were service providers, because at some point they would go to communities and find people with no drinking water, and they work on projects to ensure that they support communities in that situation. And they were service providers. So it's like what the government is charged to do, to provide
That's
services for the people. Before, that was what CSOs, NGOs were also doing in this country, especially CSOs. But it is also changing now. CSOs, at some point when you have, let's say, the executive and the parliament having to connive and ensure that they and betray this country, the CSOs will serve as watchdog when actually the parliament has an oversight function. But now we're seeing that these two organs of our government, they connive and they want to betray the government, the country, for instance. The CSOs will come out as watchdogs to ensure that those dubious things are brought to spotlight. And now what we generally that CSOs are doing is advocacy on policy issues. Um, During the CRC process, we've seen CSOs making a lot of position papers. And now we have also seen CSOs having consultations with the National Assembly, different select committees. So the advocacy is on policy issues, where we think that the country is not getting it right, especially when it has to do politics, with policy.
policies.
We engage the authorities and ensure that we have a better policy that is going to serve a test of time, but it is also going to serve the general good of our populace. So example would be, let's say, the torture bill, and also the anti-corruption bill. CSO have played a good role, but even the Access to the Information Act now, CSOs have done a lot of advocacy around that bill, and that is why when it passed, we are all claiming ownership. So CSOs are relevant in a democracy, and the Gambia cannot be an exception. That is why we, even though some would continue to do that natural role that they have been set up by providing services, we're also seeing others that are not doing that, but also playing the more reason why CSOs are being established to serve as a watchdog and ensure that policy issues are advocated, policies are being implemented to serve the general good of our people.
Indeed, CSOs hold quite a big deal as far as our development is concerned. And now, in fact, they are not just providing employment, advocacy opportunities. In fact, they are in fact partnering governments in development. I mean, in reaching out different communities, especially in the provincial Gambia, and so they are also contributing to that diversification and decentralization of development, which is really key as far as we are concerned. But this is what the time has permitted us here as far as the program is concerned. But before we end the episode, we'll take maybe your final remarks, and then we can end it from there.
Thank you so much. Um, Let me say, that regardless of all our challenges, all the shortcomings or failures we had or we are having, I am sure we have a reason to celebrate as a country. I am sure we have a reason to be proud that we are Gambians. I am also sure that our country would get to where all of us would want it someday, if we get things right. So all what we need to do is get ourselves involved, get ourselves organized, especially on governance, and ensure that our politics is never the same. It is politics on issues, politics on policies, so that at least at the end of the day, we can come together, have a conversation, and say, this is what is going wrong, and all of us will accept it and provide solutions to those things. But not to say that it is coming from this A, because this A belongs to A or this group, or it is coming from B because B belongs to this group, so we must not listen. But since it is coming from a Gambian or somebody who loves the Gambia, we have a country that all of us can sit down and say, let's do it this way. When we do it that way, it is going to be good for all of us. So I am hopeful that one day, and not even in the distant future, but soon as we are going to achieve some of these development steps.
All right. Those were good remarks. Sooner or later, in fact, in the soonest time possible, God willing, the Gambia would attain to reach the development level that we so desire as a people, and that was important. Thank you for accepting our invitation to come to the Sustainability Track here on African Renaissance TV. It was a pleasure having a conversation with you.
Thank you.
So this is all we have for you. From the Sustainability Track coming your way every week on African Renaissance TV with me, Mohamed Bibaj. This episode has been broadcasting for you from the Badala Beach Hotel here in the Gambia. And until we come your way with more interesting episodes of the Sustainability Track, stay in touch, and happy Independence Day to all Gambians and lovers of the Gambia, the smiling coast of Africa. Bye-bye.